The Good Neighbor Network, FM 101.9 and AM 1450 Murfreesboro, FM 100.5 Smyrna, and online at WGNSradio.com.
What is up? Welcome to One Show, giving you the truth about personal finance. This is Financial Coaching Radio, and I'm your host, Jason Qualls, certified financial planner, one of the only independent commission-free financial advisors in Rutherford County. For all about me, check out jasonquallscfp.com, jasonquallscfp.com. If you want to jump in and be a part of the show, click email the show or any of the social media links at financialcoachingradio.com. A little bit of, we're going to be talking estate planning later in the show. I'm just going to kind of dabble into this for just a second with some charitable giving changes. Now, charitable giving, what is that? Obviously, if you're giving anything to charity, that will be what it applies for. But in the context of financial planning and charitable giving, not that it's the main reason that charitable giving happens, but if you're giving, it could be tax deductible. Depending on what type of gift you're making, the amount of the gift you're making, your adjusted gross income, all how it plays into your tax situation. But in the past, I don't recall. This is a new one as far as the tax code as it relates to some of the changes that happened fairly recently. I think the big beautiful bill is what changed this one. Charitable contributions must exceed 0.5% of the giver's adjusted gross income before it's tax deductible starting this year. That means many thousands of dollars must be given without a tax incentive. Again, you don't do charitable giving for the most part for a tax incentive, but it is always been there. Now, this is one of those provisions. It makes you scratch your head, right? And what it comes down to is there was some negotiation going on. It's like, well, if you want this level of tax cut, then we're going to need some money given somewhere else. So I don't know how much money that would generate, but if you're talking about billions, probably I would say billions of dollars that get given away by high net worth people to charitable organizations that they are deducting. And if you think the first half of 1% of that amount of money is no longer deductible, and you're going to pay tax on that money, that is additional tax revenue. That's what's frustrating about some of these tax law changes, especially as it relates to certain retirement plans. We have enough retirement plan laws on the books. When we get into these tax negotiations, there's always these trade-offs. And some of the trade-offs that they're putting in laws on the books, it just doesn't make any sense. It's like, it doesn't make any sense at all, but here we are. They had to generate some tax. It's like the RMD age things that we had in the stretch IRA. Not that I see the IRA as being something that should be stretched out in perpetuity if you're passing it down to children or grandchildren. But no, that's the way it was for a long time. And we got used to that law, and then they just kind of pulled it out from under us. And now we have this 10-year rule for any non-spouse beneficiary unless you meet a certain exception. So that will kind of tie into some of the discussion we're going to have after this first break, talking with John Baker, estate planning attorney. But first, let me remind you, with the new year, new you, right? New year, you, new you. We can use that phrase all year. So whenever you get around to becoming this new year, new you in the new year, you can remind yourself how real financial planning works and how real financial planning works, and whether you want to kind of ignore it or be so nervous about your choices is this. Independent financial advisors matter. Why? Because they typically don't have the hierarchy and management structure where they are limited to what they can do in your best interest. So you're looking for an independent financial planner. You're looking for someone who is a CFP, a certified financial planner, has the top designation in the business, because that actually says they might know a little thing or two about financial planning. And the third leg of the stool is compensation structure. And fee only, in the simple sense, is a broad term, but fee only means there's no conflicts of interest, at least there's very limited. They are paid to advise you what's in your best interest. They're not paid to sell you something. They're not paid to gather assets, all those other things that are out there. So independent CFP, fee only, that's what you want. Go to Jason Qualls, CFP.com for more. We're going to take our first break, and as mentioned, as promised, we'll be talking estate planning with John Baker. Stick around. Right after this, this is Financial Coaching Radio.
Hey, Financial Coaching Radio listeners, if you don't understand exactly how your financial advisor is compensated, you could be in big trouble. My name is Jason Qualls, a commission-free certified financial planner. To learn more about why my process is so unique, go to jasonquallscfp.com or call 878-2134 today. Okay, folks, I've said it before, but I'm going to say it again. If you were my client or a loved one, I would never let you get your wills done online. This is truly a case of where you only get what you pay for, and those you leave behind will be the ones to pay the price. Go see estate planning attorney John Baker today by calling 896-5621 or go to bakercounsel.com. Again, that's 896-5621 or bakercounsel.com. Get the expert estate planning advice you need today.
Did you know that the U.S. tax code has over 70,000 pages? This is precisely why you must have a tax expert on your team. The folks at TH&W CPAs have been providing their expertise to individuals and businesses in Middle Tennessee for over 50 years. And now they have an office right here in Murfreesboro. Call Kevin Sizemore today with TH&W CPAs at 848-1072. That's 848-1072 or online at thwcpa.com.
Welcome back to the show. This is Financial Coaching Radio. I'm your host, Jason Qualls, certified financial planner. Back in the house is John Baker, estate planning attorney. John Baker, local estate planning attorney. But John, how long have you been in business, buddy? You've been, it's a long time, 20-something years?
Well, I started practicing law in Murfreesboro in 1998, so whatever that is.
Then you transitioned over
25 years. So
what led you to do estate planning?
Yeah, so
is that a focus you come into law school thinking about, or is it something that happens later?
Well, it really wasn't for me, but I was originally an Air Force JAG officer and did that for a number of years, for 4 active duty years, and then I worked at the state attorney's office for 3 years, and then went into private practice and tried several areas, looking at several areas to see what I would like to do, and I gravitated to this area. But probably the reason I gravitated to it and why it appealed to me was I had, my education was in finance and accounting, so those areas, work well with estate planning.
Right.
And then as I got into estate planning and started doing some revocable trust work, I had a lot of clients coming in concerned about, health costs, long-term care, nursing home costs, Medicaid, all those issues. So eventually, I got into those issues because those were
coming up more.
Coming up. I mean, it's what my clientele, a lot of the clientele was interested in doing some, various types of planning in that area.
In the military, you do a lot of estate planning for enlisted men, right? That's
that's right. And part of your job as a JAG officer is to make sure that the military personnel have all of their affairs taken care of so that they are ready to deploy, at any moment. And part of that is making sure they have wills and powers of attorney and things like that. And so we have a whole system in the military to do that. And so we just, basically everybody at your installation would run through your office to get their documents done.
And are those documents, are they very comparable to what you'd see in civilian life? Is there any major differences?
Yeah, well, most legal offices aren't staffed to what I would call like real detailed trust work. And of course, with military personnel, particularly active duty, the clientele tend to be either retirees or people, with younger families, families with minor children. And you deal a lot of those issues. But for most legal offices are not staffed to do, for example, irrevocable trusts or even revocable trusts. Usually we're doing will-based plans with powers of attorney, provisions for minor children, and the health care documents. Those are the key documents that we would normally do in the military.
John Baker, bakercounsel.com is the website. John, let's define estate planning because, that's the area of law you practice with Medicaid and asset protection planning as well. And most people probably have a general idea of what estate planning is, but how would you define it since you're in that area of expertise?
Yeah, so basically it's the ability, it's planning for your incapacity or your death, and to do so in a manner that promotes efficiency, tax savings, and to ultimately go to the people you want it to go to at your death and the manner you want it to go to. So there's two big components. There's the incapacity, so if you get ill, you get sick, we've got those issues covered. And then, of course, administration of your estate at your death. So that's kind of in a nutshell what estate planning is.
Now, on both fronts, but let's use death as a starting point. Mm-hmm. Do you know any history of how the background of the legal work here? Like, cause we've done stories where George Washington was writing his will, somewhere time of the Revolutionary War. So obviously, estate planning goes back that far.
Right.
And when was the legal premise set that you need a document that kind of outlines where your stuff goes?
Yeah, and I can't tell you how far back it goes, but it, our system comes from England, so you're going way back, many hundreds of years. And we had this thing in law school, in kind of in the trust world called the rule against perpetuities. And that was basically designed to limit how long a trust could last so that landowners could not hold all the land in the country forever, essentially. So there were rules put in place. And
I think there's a movie done about that concept that George Clooney was in about a big Hawaiian estate or something.
There's a lot of British television, British oriented movies that get into estates. A lot of your mysteries, if you watch British mysteries, a lot of them, somebody was killed because somebody wanted somebody's inheritance or something like that. So yes, it goes way back. So
perpetuity, you can't pass on property forever.
Well, we used to have this real complicated, or at least I thought it was real complicated. Most people in law school really didn't probably grasp what it was or even how to do it. But the modern trend, at least in a number of states in the United States, is kind of go to the other extreme. Tennessee now has a statute that says trusts can last over 300 years.
Well, that's pretty much perpetuity.
That's pretty much perpetuity, yeah. So they kind of they're basically getting rid of the rule against perpetuities.
So on that concept, 300 years is up.
Yeah. And it may be a little more, I don't remember what the exact year, but
so
it's
then what
over
happens
300. So, well, I guess at some point you might hit the statutory rule against perpetuities, but of course the person who created the plan and they're not really going to be around. But do
they just force you to break it up and sell everything, I guess?
Great grandchildren. But the reason states like Tennessee have done that, and there may even be some states that have just gotten rid of it altogether, is there is a competition among states for people's money and their wealth. And how do you get that? You pass laws that attracts money to your state or keeps money in your state. And one way to do that, at least as it relates to high net worth people, is say, hey, you can do trust work in Tennessee. We can make this a multi-generational trust. It can last over 300 years under Tennessee law. And
No, on that front there, so trust are state specific.
yes, trust
Do you have to
law is
reside
state.
in that state, or can you just go to any state and have a trust drafted if you like those laws better?
Well, you're asking a law school question there, but but no,
I know people
you
do it on
can-
business, and they'll open
you
up
can-
like a Wyoming or
yeah.
a Montana trust.
That's right. Usually, and I'm very much probably simplifying this, but usually you need some connection, some nexus to the state where you want the trust to be domiciled, essentially. So if you live in, Montana and you want a Tennessee trust, you probably ought to at least have a Tennessee co-trustee. Okay, maybe a bank that's in Tennessee or something like that. So you're going to try to have some nexus to the state where the trust is connected, but you do not have to be a resident of the state.
But in general, it's several hundred years is what the rule is in some states, maybe even Tennessee.
Yes.
How do they? I guess there's no way to police that to a certain degree.
Well, yeah, no, I've never seen an actual case how that would play out. It would obviously have to end up in court. There'd have to be some sort of determination that the trust has terminated or ended.
So estate planning, dealing with death, dealing with incapacity, and then the history behind it comes from kind of when we migrated from England over here. We kind of kept some of those concepts, but it's state specific. It's not a federal.
Yes. So basically, your estate law, your trust law, probate law, that is all state law. Now, of course, tax law can be federal or state, but if you're just talking about the estate or the trust laws themselves, those are state law based.
And the widespread information that's out there, the people who they just dabble in learning about estate planning, the revocable living trust is still something that's being marketed out there.
Yes.
And it is can be a very important key part of planning,
Yes.
but it's not a fit for everyone.
That's right.
Well, John, is it your opinion that if it didn't cost any money and they were very easy to set up, and would everyone be better off? Most people with a trust than they will. Is it too much simplicity there? Or?
Yeah, there probably is. And maybe you generalize to say, well, the revocable trust plan, by promoting privacy and probate avoidance, is doing some things that the will plan doesn't do.
Yeah, it's always the probate thing.
Yeah.
People are scared of probate.
But like I tell you, it's interesting that you brought that up. I was with the lady this morning, and that was really what she was trying to evaluate. Should she and her husband go with the will plan or a revocable trust plan? And we really had to look at their specific situation. There were some health issues with the spouse. We really had to go over that, and there were some pros for the will plan for her, particularly as it related to maybe Medicaid. And there were some pros to the revocable trust plan. So she's got to kind of decide which way, but there were pros and cons of each. Okay, so
And that's where anything financial and
that's
estate
right.
plans. It's no absolutes, right?
you can't. It's you can generalize and say, yeah, a trust does more than a will plan, but does that mean it's a fit for that particular person or that couple? And you really have to evaluate it. And so we had an hour and a half meeting. And but she's still not sure what she wants to do. She's going to take that information, discuss it with her husband and her son. But she knows the pros and cons. So now they can
people get
talk.
bogged down, don't they? They have a hard time deciding on these things.
Yeah, I just they're generally in this particular lady's case, it was a close call. There were pros and cons under their situation, what might be best. And they'll have to make that judgment call. They'll have to decide. I've given them all the information, all the pros and cons, and they'll decide which route to go. But it is a simplification to say that everybody should look at it from their particular case. Because I have some people that come in, they want a will plan. We talk about it. They say, "Oh no, we
want a trust plan."
And I have some come in thinking they want a trust, but then we get into it and say, "Well, a will plan might work better for you." So,
It's anything financial media related. The way the media presents things, it's got to be this way. You got to do it because they want you to read the article, and then people learn just enough to be dangerous, and they kind of think it applies to their
and
situation.
I do get clients that come in that that work with a financial planner or a brokerage, and they will have attended attended some seminars or webinars, and they've just drilled that you've got to have a revocable
Right.
trust. There is no other alternative. And that's an oversimplification. You need to look, it needs to be evaluated and look at the pros and cons and see what's the best fit.
If you're just joining in, this is Financial Coaching Radio. I'm Jason Qualls, certified financial planner, joined by John Baker, estate planning attorney. Stick around. We'll be back right after this, and we'll continue this in-depth discussion on these issues. Stick around.
Have a financial plan? I'm not talking about a worthless binder full of pretty charts and graphs. Are you certain you're on track to reach all your financial goals? A comprehensive financial plan is about so much more than just your IRA and mutual funds. It involves risk management, tax planning, professional investment management, retirement, and estate planning. Make sure your entire financial life is in order by calling me, Jason Qualls, a commission-free certified financial planner, at 878-2134. Or go to my website, jasonquallscfp.com. Buying a house is stressful, and so is shopping for a mortgage. Take my advice and get a second opinion on the mortgage for your new home or your refinance. Not all banks and mortgage companies are created equal. Trust me on this. Call my friend Marshall Sparkman with Franklin Synergy Bank at 615-439-0885. Great team, great process, and the best rates. Marshall Sparkman with Franklin Synergy Bank at 615-439-0885.
Welcome back to the show. This is Financial Coaching Radio, the one show giving you the truth about personal finance. I'm Jason Qualls, certified financial planner, financialcoachingradio.com to listen to the show anytime, anywhere. Again, financialcoachingradio.com. I'm joined by John Baker, estate planning attorney, bakercounsel.com, bakercounsel.com. John, off the air, we were discussing briefly people taken advantage of, and whether they're could be young with mental disabilities, but certainly it happens more with elder abuse, I guess is the term for it that's being used today. How can estate planning limit your risk for elder abuse?
Yeah, so the just again, I think having a thorough, detailed plan that fits your particular circumstances, and planning for that potential vulnerability, and just being sure that you have a good plan in place to be aware of the types of scams that are out there. Now, when if I'm dealing with an older couple and maybe one of them already has some cognitive decline, and there's those concerns are more heightened. Appointing the proper trustees or the proper executors, the proper agents under powers of attorney. But having those documents in place with good agents is key. But keep in mind that a lot of times the abuse comes from the family member. So, sometimes just because it's the oldest family member child doesn't mean that's the best child to be in that role. And you just really have to look at it and be mindful and conscious. There certainly we can do things that like create irrevocable trust, get it out of somebody's name, put it in a trustee that would not be vulnerable, or even a bank trustee.
But if the person with a cognitive decline, or it happens, you wrote the documents before the cognitive decline, and they're in charge of their own financial destiny, if they make withdrawals from their accounts, really nothing that can really prevent that.
Yeah, so that gets back to that control element, and
you have to limit control somewhat.
Yeah, and a lot of times the people, when they're planning for it, they're thinking about, what will happen when I'm gone? What if my wife becomes vulnerable, or what if my children are not? I'm concerned about their vulnerability or their risks, and a lot of times if you want to do planning for that, sometimes you are creating trust for the spouse or for the child. one thing I'll do with a marital trust, let's say we have one spouse dies, we've got a marital trust set up for the surviving spouse, but we may put a child, one of the trustworthy children, on to be co-trustee with the surviving spouse, so that the surviving spouse can't just unilaterally
checks and balances.
Checks and balances in there. So, or even in some scenario, maybe the surviving spouse isn't the trustee at all. But just you want to look at all those things, and but it's a difficult topic, and it does happen, and unfortunately, sometimes it happens with the person you trusted, like a family member.
Well, when we started doing the show, it's been over 15 years now. I remember a story you telling me about. It was a surviving wife, I think, that inherited. I don't remember. It wasn't substantial. It was a good sum of money, but it wasn't like billions or 500 million or anything. But I think the very next relationship she ended up getting into was someone who tried to take advantage of this person.
Yeah, and that's a scenario you'll see.
And what could be done there, unless it was pre-planned with irrevocable trust? Is it just being aware and having those discussions, watching out for your elderly family members?
Yeah. So if you have the situation, where the husband and wife, and let's say the husband dies, the wife survives, and the wife gets everything, it's totally in her control. There's no trust. There's no child as co-trustee. Anything like that, then at least on the legal documents, that surviving spouse owns it, and she has the ability to dispose of that any way she wanted, even potentially cutting out her own children or grandchildren for some person she met, a year or two ago. So there's ways to plan for that, but it's not always easy to plan. The simple basic will plan is not.
Not going to get
it's
it
not
done.
necessarily going to be the solution there. You may need to create have a marital trust and maybe a co-trustee on there. I have found I go over those risks, basically with every potential client I have come in, or husband and wife, and a lot of times I find that although they're aware of those risks, we talk about those risks. They don't necessarily want to be creating marital trust. They just don't want to take it that far, so sometimes
because it can
they're aware of the
it
risk,
can feel like an overwhelming project you're in.
Yeah, they don't want to feel like the spouse has to answer to somebody. The surviving spouse would have to answer to somebody, and so that. But ultimately, they have to decide.
Because that's really what would have to happen, right? It's protected, so they'd have to some level of checks and balances, or co-trustee, or not trustee themselves at all.
Yeah, so even if we create a marital trust, but if we name the surviving spouse as the sole trustee, even though we have that trust, she's in total control of it. I mean, she has the checkbook, so it can. I think a lot of times you have to have a co-trustee for that marital trust.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to do it.
And or require certain types of distributions to have the approval of one of the children or something like that.
Do you put a dollar amount on those, or?
I have not. Typically the way I've done it is if I just have the child on there as a co-trustee. Haven't really limited it just to distributions. I'll just put co-trustee.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
But I think having that second set of eyes, the family member that's not going to be unduly influenced by some sort of predator, like, have the child. I remember when I first started doing estate planning, and I was learning how to do this, and I was going to conferences and training and whatnot. And there was a lawyer there, and he was just talking about revocable trust. He wasn't talking about irrevocable trust or anything really fancy. He was just talking about revocable trust. He says, hey, I made a revocable trust for my mom. I'm a trustee on it with her. And now if predators call her, she just says, well, you'll have to talk to my son. He's my trustee and attorney. Well, they go away.
Right.
So sometimes it's not even a formal asset protection thing. It's just when they hear they have to talk to someone else, they run it. The predators usually are looking for easy prey,
right?
Not the hard ones,
right? And people are more. my mother's ran into it. Just the simplest kind of. It's not a whole lot of money that they're asking for, but it's just I don't know how they find their information. They press them pretty hard with a great story, and you kind of like it gets them thinking. Is this really?
I tell you what, my mother, who has nothing but her pension and Social Security, ran into the same thing. She was at a vulnerable moment. And it was on Facebook. It was a total scam from Nigeria, and we finally got it cut off. But she spent a few $1,000s before we were able to, and she resisted it. They sometimes your parent, if they're older and they've had a little bit of decline and aging, they can get defensive and they're embarrassed sometimes. They're embarrassed about it.
Yeah. So be on the lookout for that, John. I appreciate your time. BakerCounsel.com, BakerCounsel.com. John, what's that local phone number for anyone who has questions?
615-896-4154.
I appreciate it. This is Financial Coaching Radio. We're back right after this.
I like to dream, yes, right between the sound machine. On the cloud of sound, I drift in the night. Any place it goes is right. Goes far, flies near, to the stars away from here. Well, you don't.
How much are your investments costing you each year? Most people don't have a clue. Why is this extremely important? Because overpaying by just 1% a year in fees and expenses can reduce your account balance at retirement by 28%. You heard me right. 28% less at retirement. I'm commission-free, certified financial planner Jason Qualls. I don't sell financial products. I don't accept commissions or kickbacks from investment companies. Give me a call today for a free unbiased investment review at 878-2134 or visit my website, jasonquallscfp.com. A recent undercover study found that over 89% of paid tax preparers made mistakes. You heard me right, over 89%. Is your tax person making mistakes? Tax mistakes cost you money and may even lead to an IRS audit. I recommend you get a second opinion on your tax return today by calling Tuthero Helen Welch CPAs at 848-1072. Tuthero Helen Welch has been providing tax services to individuals and businesses for over 50 years. So call them today at 848-1072 or go to thwcpa.com.
Financial Coaching Radio is with you online every day, 24/7. FinancialCoachingRadio.com. Click archives. You'll get all the past shows, at least many of them, past shows. And we try to talk about things that are not your just general run-of-the-mill. How do you get out of debt? How do you create a budget? Because, those are all things that we all should know as we get into our lives of adulting. Not that we don't need some assistance and we're not going to make some missteps. That's just called life. That's called living. It's not that we're not going to be hard-headed. We all do that. But this show is going to cover things that it's not even advanced. It's just real financial planning topics that you cover once you know not to spend every dime you make and to live on less than you make. That's where Financial Coaching Radio finds its specialty. Listen online anytime at FinancialCoachingRadio.com to learn more about what I do, how I do it. As one of the only independent commission-free financial advisors in Rutherford County, go to JasonQuallsCFP.com. That's JasonQuallsCFP.com. I'm going to get out of here for today. I appreciate you. Appreciate you listening today, every day. Appreciate all the online listens as well. Anytime you have questions, anytime you want to run an idea by me, don't be afraid to hit me up via email, JasonQuallsCFP.com. I'll be back at you tomorrow, same time, same channel. Keep it locked in, as always, for all the local talk right here on WGNS. I'll see you next time.